When it comes to alcohol, the world is starting to wake up. More and more people are beginning to question their beliefs around this drug. See, if we really boil it down to its core and we remove the conditioning, the media, the way that it's been portrayed in movies, the marketing messages, what is alcohol at its core? Well, it's nothing more than a highly addictive, poisonous substance that if you drink enough of it, it will kill you. But this is the same thing that's being pushed upon us every single day of our life from the day that we were born. And in fact, some of the richest people on the planet today have made their fortune by selling this drug to the masses. And slowly, but surely, people are starting to question it. People are starting to say, is alcohol really all it's made out to be? Or am I being sold something that's actually taking so much away from me? Because what does alcohol give you? Well, it gives you absolutely nothing. It can't. It's a drug. A drug doesn't give anybody anything. But if you really ask yourself, what does it take from you? Well, now we can start to see concrete things. Because alcohol takes away your health, it takes away your confidence, it takes away your energy, and it does nothing but take from you. See, I've not drank myself for over 6 years after a decade of struggling, of drinking too much and going to AA meetings. My entire life has changed. The trajectory of my life is completely different than what it was when I was drinking. And it's not just me as well. Some of the most successful and intelligent people in the world today are also waking up. So let's listen to them. And if you want information on how to stop drinking alcohol, if you're a business owner or professional and you don't want to go to AA or therapy or rehabs, just go to soberclear.com to learn more about how I work with people and help them control their drinking quickly.
Yeah, I never expected to live to see the age of 30. It had a lot to do with the extent to which I was in the grips of addiction and alcoholism.
It was 1 shot, 2 shot. What does 4 feel like? What does 8 feel like? And all of a sudden I'm taking 12 shots of vodka, on a school night by myself.
I can't remember, to be honest, because a lot of it's blackout, isn't it?
So you would black out?
Of course.
And this was what, alcohol?
Yeah, and everything else. Yeah.
Everything else? What is that, all the different substances available?
Yeah, everything.
Wow, everything? All in one evening?
Probably, yeah.
Wow, it's lucky you're still here.
Yes, and I'm very grateful to be here, it's no joke.
What was your drug of choice? Was it crack? That was my drug of choice. Alcohol was my drug of choice. The drug of choice was the drug that was in front of me.
I used to drink and take drugs to get away from the depression, because when I was drunk or high, then I wouldn't think about being depressed. I thought about being I'm a boxing champion, or I feel great.
I was trying everything to drown the pain and the frustration and the suffering of those losses by overworking, over drinking, over smoking weed and cigarettes.
Well, we all have times in our lives where we feel broken. I was in a period like that. It's been, I've had my share of things that have made me feel hard to speak too much about it, but just overwhelmed or broken.
I went through heavy, darker times and I survived them. I didn't die young, so I'm very lucky. There are other artists and people that didn't survive certain things.
Wow. And I'll tell you, I drank every single night of my life, and I never thought I could live without it.
I started to drink more and more and more, and it was really hard for me to accept that meant I was an alcoholic. I was like, I can just go back. I was fine before. I just need to take a break. I just need to slow down. I'm okay. You know what I mean? This isn't me. And I started to drink every day. And I come home from work and I start to drink, and I just sit there and drink until I pass out on the couch.
Starts off as a fun little thing, and then it turns into an escape, and then all of a sudden you don't remember why you're out there doing stuff.
And it was started off with this, then it became that. Then my wife started getting on me like, Jesus Christ, look at the size. And I go, it's a home pour. 8 minutes left in the show, pour another one. So I poured the other one, and it was over, and I was walking down the stairs to our bedroom, and I didn't know if she was still up or not. I literally was hiding it on the side of my leg, trying to make sure the ice cube wasn't gonna clink against the side of the glass.
In my case, the quickest way of forgetting about the fact that you were being watched was to get very drunk. And then as you get very drunk, you become aware that, people are watching more now because now I'm getting very drunk. So I should probably drink more to ignore that more.
That initially, alcohol really saved me. It taught me how to be a social person. Like, I enjoyed going to parties and I enjoyed figuring out how to talk to people. And it was really this fuel that transformed me from this navel-gazing, insecure kid into somebody who felt like I could comport myself in a social situation as long as I was using alcohol. But very slowly over time, my life, the quality of my life just sort of declined and declined and declined.
I was running to things to avoid tough feelings, painful feelings. I just didn't know how to deal with them, and looking for anything I found that I I use for escape, to escape those kinds of, I guess, difficult feelings.
It's very hard to have relationships when you're doing drugs and drinking. For me personally, anyway. And you become closed off, unreceptive, insensitive, all the dreadful things that you've heard every other pop singer ever say.
It got so bad that I got to the weight of 340 pounds. I'm not even built to be that heavy.
I knew that my drinking was causing problems in my life across the board. I mean, like, I had less money, it was eating into my bank account, it was messing with some of my relationships. I would never feel good. The 3 days after I would go out on a bender, right, I would just be like a mess.
It was more just that I lost everything. I was practically homeless, unable to hold down like a waiting tables job. My friends all started to abandon me because I was a very angry and horrible human being to be around. And then finally, like, my girlfriend, who I never thought would leave me, like, left me. You just become an awful human being. Like, you're selfish.
At the end, I was alone, alienated from my friends. My family didn't want anything to do with me until I sorted this out. Living in a shitty apartment with barely any furniture, sleeping on a mattress on the floor. And it was very dark for a very long period of time.
And it just went from bad to worse. I hit the drink heavily on a daily basis. I was out all night partying with women of the night and not coming home. And I didn't care about boxing. I didn't care about living. I just wanted to die.
Because I'm negative and I'm dark and I want to do bad stuff. I want to hang out in this neighborhood alone. That's dangerous to hang out in this neighborhood alone up here, right? He wants to kill everything. He wants to kill me too.
Because when I get that way, my kids don't talk to me. I get a divorce. I'm thrown out of my own band. I lose everything. I mean, that's happened enough times for me to finally realize, you know what, it's not worth it.
A number of my friends ended up alcoholic, and all the people that I was in high school with and in college with were extremely hard drinkers. And I drank quite a lot till I was 27. And then I found that there was no bloody way I could write seriously and think seriously on an ongoing basis if I was hungover.
I wasn't drinking because I had a crummy childhood or because I was suffering from any personal trauma. I was drinking because I was physically addicted to alcohol.
I'd pick up the first drink, I'd like the feeling, I'd have another drink, I'd really like the feeling, and then it was past drink 2, don't remember.
It went slowly from being a work hard, play hard, have a drink, to 2 drinks, to 3 drinks, to then a habit, to then a daily habit, to then a 24/7 habit, to then a every weekend habit, getting lost in myself habit.
The addiction elevator is always going down. It only moves in one direction. The best case scenario is that person's life stays the same, but in almost every case, it continues to decline.
Addiction is really consistently choosing a short-term reward at the expense of long-term growth. And yet I couldn't stop. I mean, that's the key, right? As you go, I know this is screwing me up. I know it. And then I tell myself, you know what? Maybe it'll be different this time. Like, I'm just gonna have 1 or 2 drinks this time. And then you have 1 or 2 and you go, well, if 1 or 2 is this good, what would like 10 more be like, right? And something shifts in your head.
When you're in it, there's no way you can look outside yourself and say, oh, that's the hallmark of alcoholism. You know, I can look back now and say, wow, okay, there were clear signs, but of course you don't see them yourself.
Sometimes if you don't watch the kind of habits that you're building, they become lifestyles. And not every lifestyle leads to roads of riches and benefits and incentives and a great life. Some roads lead to death, they lead to struggle, anxiety, depression, and all of the opposite things that somebody wants for their life, and I was there. Before I knew it, I was digging myself a hole, and everywhere I looked, it was so dark, and I lost myself. I spiraled into a sense of no self-worth. I hit rock bottom, to the point where I almost lost my job, to the point where some people had to have very tough conversations with me. Some friends had to deal with my drama, and they say hurting people hurt people. I was hurting inside and I was hurting others and didn't even know it.
You do stupid things when you're drunk. You hurt yourself. You compromise your health. It's really hard on the people around you. You tend to turn into a liar and it screws up your life.
And we've been brainwashed by alcohol industries to believe that quitting is really hard. It's part of their propaganda. They're the ones pushing that message, which seems like, why would they tell people it's hard? But they're doing that because if it's hard, you won't quit.
If I go out and watch people drinking, it makes everybody stupid and fuzzy-minded, and The problem is when you're drinking, you think you're cool, but, you have those same delusions that Homer Simpson's friend Barney had when he was drinking, that you're this kind of, elegant and sophisticated comedian, and it just makes everybody stupid. And what's better isn't being straight and not making mistakes. It's like that's all prohibition in some sense. What's better is, no, you need an adventure, man. You need to get out there and have something to do.
Yeah.
And something worth waking up for. And that's the substitute for the addiction. If we had to make a bad drug legal, the worst choice was alcohol. It's definitely the case.
There's no safe amount of alcohol to drink.
No amount of alcohol is good for your overall health. Even in what are considered relatively small amounts.
Even that one glass.
Even moderate drinking.
Just one drink a day could impact your brain.
It is one of the most destructive drugs to various parts of your body and different organ systems.
Well, alcohol was the 7th greatest risk factor for death and disability.
And if you look at the cost of alcohol across the world, it kills 2.8 million people every year. That's almost half the amount of people who die from tobacco.
50% of murders take place in an alcohol-fueled environment. Either the victim or the perpetrator or both is drunk. It's almost the sole cause of domestic abuse. It's also the only drug we know that actually makes people more aggressive.
And some studies estimate that a drink of alcohol has about the same cancer-causing potential as 1 to 2 cigarettes.
Alcohol affects the development of synapses of the brain. People who drink at an early age heavily have been shown to have significantly smaller brains and reduced cognitive ability.
Even a little bit of alcohol causes damage in the brain. It disrupts something called white matter. White matter is the highway in your brain that transmit information and impulses. And even a little bit of alcohol has been shown to disrupt the white matter in your brain.
Don't think people understand how once you get beyond 1 to 2 drinks, like how harmful it is on your liver. Alcohol, ethanol, which is the alcohol we drink, is toxic. Its toxicity is non-linear, so its toxicity kind of goes like this, meaning at low levels, it's just a little bit of an increase, but the more you drink, the more it becomes toxic. But there is no dose of ethanol that is helpful.
It is the poison, the acetaldehyde itself, that leads to the effect of being inebriated or drunk. I think most people don't realize that being drunk is actually a poison-induced disruption in the way that your neural circuits work. In thinking about the biochemical effects of alcohol and what it's doing to the body, what it's doing in all cases, it's consumed into the gut. The liver immediately starts this conversion, ethanol to acetaldehyde to acetate, and some amount of acetaldehyde and acetate are making it into the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. Most things, thankfully, can't pass across the blood-brain barrier, but alcohol, because it's water and fat soluble, just cruises right across this fence and into the milieu, the environment of the brain.
So it goes into every nook and cranny in the brain, and there it has lots of influences. So it slows down the excitatory signals, it speeds up the inhibitory signals.
There's a slight suppression in the activity of neurons in the prefrontal cortex. This is an area of your neocortex that's involved in thinking and planning, perhaps above all in suppression of impulsive behavior. And as you shut down the prefrontal cortex, that GABAergic suppression of impulses starts to be released. So people will say things that they want to say without so much forethought about what they're saying. Or they might do things that they want to do without really thinking it through quite as much, or they might not even remember thinking it through at all. One of the more important things to know about the effects of alcohol in the brain is areas of the brain that are involved in flexible behavior, sort of considering different options, like I could do A or I could do B. Those brain areas basically shut down.
Probably the most common detriment that alcohol has to the brain is the fact that alcohol is a depressant to the central nervous system. So it impairs your judgment, it impairs your reflexes, and your ability to think through.
And top-down inhibition is diminished. That is, habitual behavior and impulsive behavior starts to increase. This is true in the short term, so after people have 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 drinks. But it's also true that the more often that people drink, there are changes in the very circuits that underlie habitual and impulsive behavior.
You know what's amazing to me is how the people who make alcohol get a free ride. I don't know how we got it in our heads to treat one like it's completely taboo, and the other we kind of shrug. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's like, this is the drug that is causing so many problems for young people, particularly on campuses.
Sure.
And the schools are hand in glove with the manufacturers of it.
There is a lot of pressure on young people not to drink necessarily, but to find happiness through going out and getting mashed. But if it doesn't work for you, and if you keep waking up going, I don't seem to be having nearly as good time as most of my friends, then, then think about it. It doesn't have to be something you do, is all I'd say to people.
Every time I had done something or said something that I regretted, it was when I was drinking. And I thought at one point, maybe I don't want to live a life where I'm continually or even sporadically wishing that I hadn't said or done something. And I'm very much unlikely to do that if I'm sober and clear-headed.
If alcohol wasn't a thing, and I've invented this drink that is gonna make you either really happy or really aggressive or really stupid, and we're gonna just sell it to the masses, people would be like, nah, mate, keep your funky juice. We don't want that. That sounds terrible. And it's one of those things, because it is so socially acceptable, the addiction side of it, the bad sides of it, really do fly under the radar.
The overwhelming majority of people who consume alcohol, it's to help unwind or, celebrate the end of a day, or it's usually a mechanism to take you out of a less ideal place and bring you into a more relaxed place.
In fact, most addiction does not begin with the search for getting banged up. Most addicts didn't wake up one day and go, I want to get really banged up. They woke up one day and said, I want to feel normal. And it was the search for normalcy that led to an addiction.
I think there's an aspect of it that clearly has to do with one's own morality, because it's too easy to jump on that wagon of it's a disease and my brain's been hijacked and I no longer have a choice in the matter. I think there's that element for sure, but past a certain point you have to stand up inside yourself and change. Everybody does with any issue. Ultimately, anything else is just a really new age excuse, if you ask me.
Most people know that they want to change, and most people know what they want to change, but they still struggle to make a change. And so I found that we don't often have a values crisis, we have a habits crisis, because people don't know how to reprogram their habits, and they've started to assume that the way they feel is who they are.
Well, I don't want to get too right-wing about the whole thing, but I think ultimately it's somewhat of a moral dilemma, even though a lot of programs and approaches say, no, don't say that. It's just, I'm certain there's a spiritual aspect to it, but I think largely it's kind of like you have a reasonable amount of control about what you do, what you put in your mouth with your hands, type stuff. I think ultimately you just have to, and I think getting a little older helps too.
So in order to change something, to arrive at a new vision of your future, if you wanted to arrive at a new goal or new vision of your future, you'd have to change something about yourself in order to get there. And you'd have to change the way you think, the way you act, and the way you feel. Most people then, they have that vision of the future, but they give up on that vision because in order for them to arrive at that vision, they have to do something. They have to think differently, they have to act differently, they have to feel differently. And it's so much easier to make the same choice every single day. And the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, you're going to feel uncomfortable because you're stepping from the known into the unknown. So some people would rather cling to their self-pity than take a chance and possibility. They'd rather tell the story of their past instead of telling the story of their future. They'd rather believe in their past instead of believe in their future.
Because life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Now, fear is going to be a player in your life, but you get to decide how much. You can spend your whole life imagining ghosts, worrying about the pathway to the future, but all there will ever be is what's happening here, and the decisions we make in this moment, which are based in either love or fear. Our intention is everything. Nothing happens on this planet without it. Not one single thing has ever been accomplished without intention.
Life is not easy. It is not. Don't try to make it that way. Life's not fair. It never was. It isn't now, and it won't ever be. Do not fall into the trap, the entitlement trap, of feeling like you're a victim. You are not. Get over it and get on with it. And yes, most things are more rewarding when you break a sweat to get them. Define success for yourself. So the question that we got to ask ourselves is what success is to us, what success is to you. Is it more money? That's fine. I got nothing against money. Maybe it's a healthy family. Maybe it's a happy marriage. Maybe it's to help others, to be famous, to be spiritually sound, to leave the world a little bit better place than you found it. Continue to ask yourself that question. Now, your answer may change over time, and that's fine. But do yourself this favor. Whatever your answer is, Don't choose anything that will jeopardize your soul. Prioritize who you are, who you want to be, and don't spend time with anything that antagonizes your character. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, man. It tastes sweet, but you will get cavities tomorrow, all right? Life is not a popularity contest. Be brave, take the hill, but first answer that question, what's my hill? And then we have to put in the work to maintain it. Take that daily tally. Tend our garden. Keep the things that are important to us in good shape. I mean, let's admit it. We've all got two wolves in us, a good one and a bad one. And they both want to eat. The best I can tell, we just got to feed that good one a little more than the other one. Don't leave crumbs. And the beauty of delayed gratification. So what are crumbs? Well, the crumbs I'm talking about are the choices that we make that make us have to look over our shoulder. You drank too much last night. You're too hungover to drive your son to his 8 a.m. Saturday morning baseball practice. These are the crumbs. They come in the form of regret, guilt, and remorse. You leave crumbs today, they will cause you more stress tomorrow. And they disallow you from creating a customized future in which you do not have to look over your shoulder. So let's flip the script. Instead of creating outcomes that take from us, let's create more outcomes that pay us back, fill us up, keep your fire lit, turn you on for the most amount of time in your future. These are the choices I'm talking about. And this is the beauty of delayed gratification. Get some ROI. You know what that is? Return on investment. Your investment. You. Customize your future. Don't leave crumbs.
Number one step is open the body or open the human. Open the human not only in terms of physically opening, meaning stretch open the muscles, stretch open the tendons, stretch open the ligaments, open really the body, open the lungs that more oxygen can come in, but also means open the mind. Open the mind meaning to stop, to realize whenever you are in a way limiting your views, for example, limiting your own perspective. And by regularly practicing, every day we have exercises to open the body. Every day we take care that we are opening and stay with the open mind. This openness after time is something that we are then starting to incorporate into our being, into our daily life. And this is what opens then the doors again. The more open you become, the more you will see once again the possibilities that are out there. And now, practically speaking, what should you do? Increase the level of activity, which means spend a lot of time outside while the sun is shining where there are a lot of people. The opposite is you're in a dark place and you stay at home in your four walls. For some time, it's sometimes necessary, but this is not going to be the solution. So that means if you by yourself cannot create that light, then we have to somehow try that the circumstances on the outside help you, support you a little bit along this way. And the same goes for the question, if somebody finds himself in that place of darkness, either you find a way that you can find some light in there and then make it shine brighter from day to day, or you need support. I think it makes sense to say that if you are looking for external support, you need to find the persons that already solved this problem, that already went through that darkness, that already had been in that darkness.
If you're starting to put your life together and you have friends that object, those are not friends. Those are just people you know. They're not friends, because a friend is someone, this is one of the hallmarks of a friend. Here's two hallmarks. A friend is someone you can tell bad news to, and they won't tell you why you're an idiot, and they won't interfere with your suffering. They'll just listen, and maybe they'll suffer along with you. Okay, so you can tell bad news to them, and they won't tell you some worse thing that happened to them. They'll listen, and they'll suffer along with you. But a friend is also someone you can tell good news to, and the friend will say, wow, in this vale of tears, something good happened to you. Great, man.
Congrats.
I'm wonderful. It's rare. It's unlikely. Good for you. I hope 10 more things like that happen. And they're not envious and they're not jealous and they're not one-upping you. If you're trying to get your life together and your friends get in the way, that's actually real useful for you because you've now identified who your friends aren't. And you might think, well, I can't give them up. It's like, oh, yes, you can. And not only can you should, and it would be better for them. Because if they're aiming down and they want you going down with them, there's nothing good about what's happening to them, and there's certainly nothing good about that for you.
And to this day, I've never had a drink, and I have no longing for it. I have no interest in it. To this day, I've never had a cigarette. Don't worry, those are only 2 of my good things. I don't want to tell you about the bad things. There's plenty of bad things too. But I learned because of Fred. I learned. And that's what I think is so important. This was an idea that I had where if we can teach young people not to take drugs, just not to take them. When I see friends of mine that are having difficulty with not having that drink at dinner, where it's literally almost impossible for them to stop, I say to myself, I can't even understand it. Why would that be difficult? The fact is, if we can teach young people and people generally not to start, it's really, really easy not to take them.
On the surface level, your health changes, you look better, feel better, you walk taller, you start getting in shape, you go to the gym, you drop the weight, the beer belly, and all the nasty side effects that come with it.
And then esteemable people do esteemable things. It's like, yeah, well, you want to figure out something that you're doing with your life that's worth not getting drunk and screwing up.
That's exactly what happened to me in Prince George. It was exactly that conversation with myself. And initially I decided 6 months off, and I just never went back to it.
Like there were times I was like, man, I could never be a sober person because I'm afraid of, I can't communicate with women, or I'm afraid to, stand around in a circle with tough guys without having like a beer in my hand, or like all these little crutches, I can't. And then I remember when I got like 90 days sober, I was just like, holy shit, man. Like it was like the first time I'd ever done something like for myself,
Yeah.
And it just, man, it felt unprecedented.
Yeah.
Every time the chip's not been in control, I've screwed up, and God knows I've screwed up so many times. Oh my gosh, I've screwed up so many times when my chip has not been controlled. This is why I don't like alcohol, and this is why I don't like drugs, because you're not in control. A substance is doing that, right? But it's a good thing that you have this rage, because if we can take this, 97 octane fuel and we put it in the right engine, controlled, oh my gosh. So we need to make sure that high octane is controlled, because high octane in the wrong place can blow up a building.
I had a moment of clarity which saved my life. And I called a friend of mine who was in recovery, an old colleague of mine, and I was terrified about being a public figure and walking into recovery centers and being around recovery, and I was terrified of it. And I said to my friend who was a long time in recovery, I said, is there any way somebody famous can meet me and go with me into a recovery room? And a woman called me, and I met her, somebody I'd never met, and she walked in with me, and I've been sober since that day.
Well, right. It was entirely organized by Knoxville. He showed up with, I believe, 7 extra people. And it was not the type of intervention where they ask you if you're willing to accept help. They showed up to simply inform me that I was going to get help. And, by enacting California's 5150 law, they were able to commit me to a psychiatric ward involuntarily. And they were willing to beat me up, overpower me, and force me there. But I've never been a fighter, so they were able to just get me in the car. Yeah.
And it took about 7 days for, certain things to happen. Some people came in and talked about recovery, and I read some stuff, and I just it was time. My life was a disaster. And I decided about 7 days in that I not only wanted to go into treatment, but that I didn't want to waste my time in treatment. That if I was going to make the commitment to get sober, I wanted to give myself every advantage and really do the things that people do to stay sober. And thankfully, I've been committed to that ever since. So.
Unbelievable.
Better.
Oh, are you kidding? I would never be sitting here with you. No way, no chance.
Because?
Because I wouldn't have been able to have access to myself or other people, or even been able to take in other people if I hadn't changed my life. No way. And I never would have been able to have relationships that I do. I never would have been able to take care of my father the way I did when he was sick. So many things.
So what really helped me was when my cellmate looked me in the face and he said, Doug, you can either be a man or you can be a bitch. And where I came from, where I grew up, I mean, being called a bitch isn't cool. And I was like, you know what? I'll take the opportunity of being a man. I had to really, really believe in myself, even though I internally shouldn't have, right? The odds were stacked against me, but I had to keep believing if I knew that if I could just become a better version of myself each and every day, that I had faith that things would like get better.
And if you don't do this, you're probably going to die early, by the way. I realized I had to just rip off the Band-Aid and do the hard thing. And once I went through that process, my life improved across the board.
And once I got my health, and once I got my mind and I got my spirit right, and I started to be proud of me, when I looked at me and my kids was looking at me and they would say shit that you could only hear once you did what you needed to do and put in the work you needed to put in so that it shows.
You can only change your life if you want to change it. And I left and everyone said, are you going home early? I said, yeah. I left at 9 o'clock, I went home. And I got back home, I didn't say anything to the wife, I just went straight upstairs into a dark room. And I was sat there, and I got on my knees and I was praying and begging God to help me. After praying for about 10 minutes, I got up and I felt the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. And for the first time in years, I knew I was going to make a comeback.
How long have you been sober now?
15 years. Friggin' saved my life, saved our family. And working through that stuff. So very grateful for my wife. She's the one that didn't ask for this shit. She walked through fire with me and we walked out together stronger, way stronger than we ever would have been before.
My relationships with my friends, my family, everybody around me are so good and have been for so many years now. I wouldn't do anything to destroy that again.
I don't want to, at this point, to be running from anything. I want to sit in it, I want to feel it, I want to get through the rough night. And I found in doing so, you come out the other side with a more profound understanding of yourself, a greater gratefulness for those in your life, the birds and the trees and everything else.
I haven't took drugs in 6 days. And for me, that's a miracle. I've been lying to everybody else and think I was sober, but I'm not. This is my 6th day. I'm never going to use again.
It was my first sober Christmas, first sober New Year, and honestly, it was the best I've ever had. I'm so thankful that this is happening.
And I was like, I'm not giving up my fun. Yeah. And I could never imagine, so when I get married, I'm not going to have a drink. So when I have a kid, I'm not going to have a whiskey. Guess what? Yes, I didn't have any of that, and it's awesome.
It was the best thing I ever did. Enabled me to have a solid marriage and kids and a career, and I didn't end up a crazy actor.
Waking up 100% of the time, because there are a lot of challenges, again, that you wake up when we're being asked to be this active and this on and this focused, and we're going to be making these big changes we want to see. I don't want to wake up feeling groggy. I want to wake up feeling ready.
And then it is that thing where it's just, your life just changed and people are nice to you finally when no one's been nice to you. You've lived in a world like the drinking world and the kind of druggy world that I was in. Just everybody's miserable and they're all mean to each other constantly. You're just nasty all the time. And then you go to a meeting and people are like, hey man, it's so confusingly wonderful.
I don't miss it generally now at all. I the sort of chaos I used to invite into my life. I'm really much happier now.
I, for maybe the first time, am proud of myself that I didn't quitting.
I never look back. A whole new world opened up to me. People report better sleep, better sex, regulated weight. They report clearer skin. People report that their anxiety dissipates. Many people say they find a sense of purpose. They find that suddenly they can take on new challenges. They can start a new career. They can form a charity. They can write the book they always wanted to write.
Sometimes they talk about you have an epiphany, and I did. It was one day my wife was out, and I was opening up and I thought, am I out of my mind? Yes. And I made a phone call, and I've been sober ever since. That was 32 years ago. It's a very odd feeling, but I had some great people. I spoke to some people at the time. It's one of those things that you don't even question it.
Today is the tomorrow you were so worried about yesterday. You young people, don't give up. Just keep in there. Just keep fighting. Be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid.